I never thought I'd be the kind of person to do something like this. I never saw myself as a cheater, as someone capable of betraying the man I built a life with. But it happened. And now, I'm left with the wreckage of my choices, trying to figure out if I can ever make things right. It started innocently. My husband, Mark, and I had been married for 6 years. We had a good life, stable jobs, a nice house, and a routine that felt safe. But somewhere along the way, safe started feeling like stale. Our conversations became predictable. Our intimacy turned mechanical. And while I still loved him, I didn't feel wanted anymore. That's when I joined the gym. Mark had always encouraged me to be healthier, but it wasn't until I looked in the mirror one day and barely recognized myself that I decided to take it seriously. I signed up for personal training sessions, not expecting anything more than a push to get fit. Enter Jake. Jake was everything Mark wasn't: young, energetic, present. He made eye contact when I spoke, laughed at my jokes, and pushed me in ways that made me feel alive. At first, I chalked it up to the trainer-client dynamic. He was paid to motivate me, after all. But as the weeks went on, something shifted. I'd catch him looking at me a little too long, his touch lingering just a second more than necessary. He'd compliment me, not just on my progress, but on things like my smile, my laugh. Things Mark hadn't noticed in years. I should have stopped it there. I should have recognized the danger. But I didn't. Instead, I let myself enjoy it. I started wearing my nicer leggings to the gym, putting on a little makeup before my sessions. I told myself it was harmless, that it was just fun. Until it wasn't. One evening, after a particularly grueling workout, Jake and I were alone in the gym. Everyone else had left, and I was exhausted, leaning against the wall, catching my breath. He stood next to me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body. "You've been killing it lately," he said, his voice lower than usual. "I mean it. You're incredible." I laughed, shaking my head. "You say that to all your clients?" "Not like this." I turned to look at him, and that's when it happened. He kissed me. And I let him. It was a blur after that. The guilt barely had time to settle before we were tangled together in the back office, hands and mouths desperate and reckless. I wasn't thinking about Mark, about the life I was throwing away. I was thinking about how alive I felt. How wanted. It wasn't a one-time thing. I wish I could say it was, but once the line was crossed, it got easier to cross again. We'd steal moments in the locker room, in his car, anywhere we could. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. Until I got caught. Mark had started noticing the changes, how often I was at the gym, how distracted I seemed at home. I thought I was careful, but I underestimated him. He wasn't the type to accuse without proof, so he waited. He checked my phone when I left it unattended, found the texts, the pictures. I came home one night to find him sitting at the kitchen table, my phone in his hands, his face pale and tight. "Who is he?" he asked, voice eerily calm. I froze. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. "Mark, Don't lie to me," he interrupted. "Just tell me the truth." And so, I did. He didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. He just looked at me like I was a stranger, like the woman he married no longer existed. And in that moment, I realized I had destroyed something I could never fix. Mark moved out the next day. I haven't seen him since. As for Jake, it turns out I was just another bored housewife to him. When Mark left, I thought maybe Jake and I could be something more, that this connection we had was real. But once the thrill was gone, so was he. Now, I'm alone. I don't expect sympathy. I know I deserve the pain I feel now. I traded a good man for a fleeting high, and I lost everything in the process. I just wonder, if I could go back, would I do it differently? Or would I still make the same mistake? The first few days after Mark left were a blur. It was like living in a nightmare where I couldn't wake up. I kept expecting to hear his car pull into the driveway, to hear the door open and see him standing there, telling me we could fix this. But that moment never came. Instead, I woke up alone. The bed felt too big without him. The house felt cold. I spent hours staring at my phone, wanting to text him, call him, beg him to come back. But what would I say? "I'm sorry" wasn't enough. "I didn't mean to" would be a lie. I had meant to. I wanted the attention. I wanted the thrill. And now, I had to live with the consequences. Trying to move on. I stopped going to the gym. I couldn't stand the thought of seeing Jake again, of pretending like what we did wasn't a mistake. I knew what we had wasn't love, it was lust, pure and simple. But even knowing that, I still hated how quickly he moved on. He didn't text me. Didn't check in. Nothing. One night, in a moment of weakness, I drove by the gym just to see if his car was there. It was. But I wasn't the only one parked outside. A woman was with him. Younger, prettier. She was laughing, leaning against his car while he flirted shamelessly. And that's when it truly hit me, I was never special. I was just another one of his clients. I drove home in tears, feeling more pathetic than I ever had before. I ruined my marriage, my life, for a guy who had already moved on before the dust had settled. The message that broke me. A week later, Mark finally texted me. "I'll be coming by this weekend to pick up the rest of my things. Please don't be here." That was it. No, how are you? No, let's talk. Just a cold, distant message that shattered whatever hope I had left. I wanted to respond. I wanted to apologize again, to tell him I still loved him, that I'd do anything to fix this. But I knew it wouldn't matter. So I didn't reply. That weekend, I made sure I wasn't home. I couldn't bear to watch him pack up his life, to see him take the last pieces of himself out of our house. When I came back, everything felt emptier. The pictures of us were gone. His clothes, his books, everything that made this place ours had disappeared. The only thing he left behind was his wedding ring, sitting on the kitchen counter. I broke down right there on the floor. The long road ahead. It's been 3 months now. Mark hasn't spoken to me since. I heard through mutual friends that he moved into an apartment across town. They say he looks good. Happier, even. That thought should bring me some peace, knowing he's doing better without me. But all it does is remind me of what I lost. As for me, I'm still picking up the pieces. I started therapy, not because I think it'll magically fix everything, but because I need to understand why I did this. Why I threw away a good man for a fleeting thrill. Why I let myself become the kind of person I used to judge. I wish I could end this with some grand revelation, some moment of clarity that makes everything make sense. But the truth is, I don't have that yet. All I know is that I hurt the person who loved me the most. And that's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. 3 months turned into 6. Then a year. I kept waiting for the pain to dull, for the regret to fade, but it never did. It just became a part of me, an ever-present ache that reminded me of what I lost. Therapy helped, but it didn't erase the truth. Nothing could. Mark never reached out. Not once. And I didn't expect him to. I had broken something between us that could never be repaired. I thought about him often, though, how he used to look at me, how he used to hold my hand absent-mindedly while watching TV. I took all those small moments for granted, and by the time I realized their worth, it was too late. I heard through mutual friends that he started dating again. The first time I saw a picture of him with another woman on social media, it felt like a knife to the chest. She looked happy. He looked happy. And for the first time, I had to accept the brutal reality: he had moved on. He had found someone worthy of the love I threw away. As for Jake, I haven't spoken to him since the night I saw him with that other woman. I heard he eventually left town, moving to another gym in another city, chasing new clients, new affairs. It was never real for him. I was just another mistake in his long list of bad decisions. I moved into a smaller apartment, sold the house that once felt like home. It wasn't mine anymore. It was a monument to my worst choices, a place filled with ghosts I couldn't bear to live with. What I learned. People like to paint cheaters as monsters, as irredeemable villains who deserve everything bad that happens to them. And maybe I was the villain in Mark's story. But I've learned that cheating isn't always about lust or selfishness. Sometimes, it's about loneliness. About needing to feel wanted when you've spent too long feeling invisible. That doesn't make it right. Nothing ever will. But I understand myself better now. And if I could go back, if I could undo everything, choose differently, I would. But life doesn't give you rewinds. It only gives you consequences. And this? This is mine. The weight of my own regret.